So welcome and thank you everyone for joining us. And we are recorded, right? Yes, Priscilla?
Yes,
Excellent.
We are up and running.
We are up, running, and functional. So thank you all very much. I'm Catherine Wygant-Fawcett, the Executive Director of the Institute for Family-Owned Business, otherwise known as IFOB. We're excited to have you here today at Barry Dunn, and we'd like to thank Seth Weber, Tina, Pam, Mackenzie, and everyone, Casey here from Barry Dunn for this beautiful high-tech space. We really appreciate it. It's great to see you all in person, and those of you on Zoom, hi. We'll be recording this program for later viewing and sending contact information to you. I'd like to thank our sponsors, Harvard Pilgrim Healthcare, Maine Trust, and the Better Business Bureau for sponsoring us today. We have Crystal and Danielle. They have lovely snacks out there for us and bags, so you can take your bags home too. So everybody gets a door prize today. But we also have some fun door prizes too that we have from Hussey Seating, and we have a cool cast iron one from Molly's Yo Regatta. So at the end, we're gonna have surveys. We like to capture the information because it's how we plan our programs for next year, and we bribe you with door prizes. So, and those of you online, sorry you can't get it, but we'll still appreciate the information on the survey. So in the IFOB, we promote, support, and champion the success of family-owned businesses that the backbone of our economy with education, networking, and other services. This year, we've offered over 50 programs, both online, in-person, and hybrid, and we have a few more to go. You can check out our program book. We had a record nearly 1,000 people who watched our show October 18th. We had 550 people in person and over 400 live streaming. If you're dying to get a book and didn't, it's here. And then here's the upcoming programs too. It was a very fun night. And you can always check out our website at fambusiness.org for full details. We have a new website. It has a couple little bugs, but it seems to be working, so that's nice. These programs are for all of you and your employees, and open programs, so anybody's welcome to come and join us. Our next one is going to be on Thursday, December 7th, on the how-tos for planned and unexpected family business transitions. Does everybody have a business succession plan program? Raise your hands. Yeah. Okay, so sometimes there's planned and unexpected ones, and Jeff Messer will be speaking too on one of those, and Ron Howard from Brodus Blueberries, who just won their 9 generations of a family business. So they're going to be speaking, and Gordon Sand and Gravel will be as well. So we'll have Karen Gregory, managing partner of Blue Highway Growth Capital. Our family business panelists will be Jeff Messer Truck, Darren Shaw, they just won Gorham Sand and Gravel, and Ron Howard from Brodus Blueberries. And then Brooke, who was not able to join us today, she's down in Florida, but she'll be back, and she's going to have her working parents group. So do we have any parents in the room? Raise a hand. Any parents? Is it challenging working and having kids? Much like we have our peer groups that we do for the next gens that we're going to talk about today, we're going to start a new one for working parents, and that's going to be open for associate partners and family businesses, because usually we just have the family businesses, but we're going to let the associate partners in there too, because I'm sure all parents across the board share challenges. So that'll be coming up. And then we're going to have our holiday party, our Mingle and Jingle. And it's easy to remember because it's January 24th, 2024. So last year we had it in a snowstorm. And they said to me, can we do a snow date? And I said, well, that would be nice. And then I asked them this time, can we do a snow date? They're like, no, we can't do that. I'm like, what you asked last year? So they might or might not. Hopefully we won't have snow on that day. But it'll be at the Woodlands, which will be really fun. So today we're showcasing a panel representing 7 generations and letting you know more about our next gen peer affinity groups. These groups meet 6 times a year. Our facilitated by our coach, we have Anne Hussey, who is one of our facilitators, and Priscilla Hanson-Mahoney, who's another one. So they'll be up in a few minutes to tell you about that. We have generally 8 to 10 participants in these meetings, and they're held here at Barry Dunn. You can come in person on Zoom. We have some people who Zoom in from Caribou, so we cover the whole state, so you can come. You sign a confidential agreement, and you agree to meet regularly. And these are open groups. We open them in the beginning of the year, so if you're interested, we'd love to know now so that we can start planning for next year. In a few minutes, I'll invite Sophie Halpern up, who is from Backhoe Financial, and she'll say a few words about her experience with the Next Gen peer groups. We'll then have Priscilla Hanson-Mahoney from Blazing Trails Coaching, who's one of our facilitators. She'll tell you a little bit more. Then we'll turn it over to our moderator and Next Gen facilitator, Anne Hussey, who are in Quad Group, who's 6th generation of Hussey Seating Company, who will lead us in our panel discussion today. We're excited to hear from the family business panelists who are, you can raise your hand as I go down the line. So we have Molly White, 1st generation president, Yo Regatta, is Sophie Halpin, 2nd generation, chartered SRI counselor, financial advisor, Backhoe Financial. We would have had Daniel Cody, 3rd generation president, the Cody Corporation. They won this year for the awards, but unfortunately he got sick today, so he's not going to be able to join us. We have Jeff Messer, 4th generation, owner and CEO of Messer Truck, and also on our board. And we have Rich Hussey, 6th generation, owner and vice president of HR at Hussey Seating Company, and Philip Hussey, 7th generation, owner of Hussey Seating Company and vice president of Chenmark. Towards the end of the program, I told you to please stick around for the quick survey and the door prizes. And then you'll also have a chance to sign up. We have a CEO central group that's like a peer group as well for 5 million or above, and they do 5 dinners, and that's a good program. So if you're interested in that, we have a women's leadership actually next Thursday. I think we're going to have Wednesday. Okay, next Wednesday we're having that, and then it's in person or Zoom. We're going to be talking about marketing trends. And then the working parents group that I told you. So now I'll invite Danielle Bess, then it'll be Sophie, then Priscilla, and then Ian. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I just wanted to thank everyone for coming out today. BBB, as Catherine mentioned, is kind of your sweet and treat sponsor today, and we're so excited to be here. Most people recognize the logo on the BBB van if you see it outside, or any of our bags over there, but aren't really sure what we do anymore. We've been around for 111 years, going on 112 years next year, and we are a local nonprofit covering Eastern Mass, Maine, Vermont, and Rhode Island, and we have reps throughout all 4 of our states, including Crystal, who's in Maine. We do lots of community events and sponsorships and education. We just want to be out in the community reminding people that we are here for both businesses and consumers, whether it be through a free business prowl that we offer, membership, or our scam tracker and speakers bureau. So if you have any questions, we'll be out there at the end. You can find us by the coffee, decaf and regular if you'd like any. But thank you for joining us today.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. I see friends from current and past Next Gen groups, so this is perfect. The Next Gen groups have been a really unique experience to troubleshoot business questions and concerns that we're all dealing with and get unique perspectives from other business professionals. It's been really helpful for me to bounce ideas off of others, and I see that benefit my peers as well in our group. As we'll probably talk about on this panel a little bit, at the end of the day, I am my own business, so I have kind of a unique business structure. So with being kind of feeling like an island sometimes, it's really helpful to get perspectives from other business leaders whose opinions I respect. It's helped me, better myself, do a better job for my staff and my clients. And I love that we do the confidentiality agreement. I think it enables everyone to just be really open from the get-go, and we really get to know each other, can speak openly and talk through various things that we're working on. So I always take away a little nugget of wisdom from each meeting. That's it. Sign up.
We need the microphone extra sensitive. So we're gonna try this. Can everybody still hear me? Yep. Awesome. My name is Priscilla Hanson-Mahoney, and I was grown up in a family-owned business, a rutabaga farm just down the street in Falmouth. So if you don't know what a rutabaga is, it's a yellow turnip. It's very popular this time of year. A lot of people like to have it with their Thanksgiving dinner. And people still ask me, do I still eat rutabaga? Yes, I do. I don't think I cannot eat rutabaga. And in fact, I prefer it over potato. So I've literally pulled tons and tons and tons of rutabaga in my lifetime. But growing up in a family business, I wish we had had a resource like IFOB when I was growing up in our family business, because I'd probably still be in my family business if the resource had existed. Working for your dad is a really tough thing to do for those of you who work for dads. There's a lot of expectations placed on you. There's also a lot of wonderment of, is this what I want? Is this the career I'm going to pursue? Where do I fit in? And how can I make a living doing this? So, hi, we're going to put our viewers on mute. So, you know, just having this resource, and it's also been a joy for me to work directly with our next generation. I know it sounds cliche, but they truly are the future, but also they're brilliant. They have brilliant minds and brilliant ideas. So while I'm just simply sitting there facilitating and helping them run an organized meeting, I'm actually doing all the learning. And I really want to thank you all for that. So if you want more information about the affinity groups, please check in with Catherine, Anne, or myself, or one of the members that's here today. The members could probably tell you the most about it and really how it affects them in their day-to-day. So, Anne. Thank you. This is a handoff here.
So this year, I had the pleasure of working with two peer groups. Can you guys hear me okay? I'm not usually soft-spoken. I haven't been accused of that. Our groups have either, have under 10, I think Catherine referenced that. And usually a simple agenda. And the agenda typically includes a challenge of the day. So something that somebody might be struggling with and they're seeking support or ideas from somebody else in the group. And then we usually have a main topic. Now we do some icebreaker type stuff as well, but I just thought I'd share what some of the main topics have been this year because they cover the gamut. Tax strategies to reduce future liabilities. Contingency planning, what if you're no longer able to lead the business? What do you have in place? Paid family leave. Economic or legislative factors that are challenging your business. Best practices for social media, time management strategies, and dealing with conflict. And as other people have said, it's really a safe place. It's a place where you can talk about what is concerning you and changes, again, month to month or meeting to meeting. I think what's most important is learning from each other. And this is a great opportunity in which to do that. So if you're not currently in a peer group, I strongly recommend it. So that was my thing on the peer groups. Is that good?
I think that's good.
All right.
Sense of what the peer groups are now. At the end.
So by way of introduction, as a facilitator for the meeting today, just quick about me. I am a 6th generation owner of Hussey Seating Company. I'm a former employee. Currently, I sit in one of the family seats on the board. You'll probably hear more about that because I've got some relatives down on that end.
She recruits well.
I'm also a partner in Quad Group, and we're a small consulting firm, and we specialize in working with family-owned businesses. So enough about me. Let's talk about the panel. So one of the reasons that this came to be is, again, wanting to hear the stories of some of these fabulous family businesses in our midst. Dad, 5th generation of Hussey Seating, Dad and I were invited to attend a conference. It was a multi-generational panel, much like this, out in upstate New York. It was fascinating to hear the stories of the businesses and, kind of what were some of the things that they were dealing with as a 1st generation versus perhaps a 6th or 7th generation. It was really, I found it particularly interesting. I love hearing the stories and said, we've got some really interesting family businesses here in Maine. Let's hear from these businesses about what they're doing and what's working and what some of the challenges have been, and kind of keeping an eye on the evolution. So what Molly, we'll hear from Molly in a minute, but what Molly's dealing with is probably very different than Jeff or Rich or Philip. So our goal today is really to provide or illustrate some of the stories, some of the things that the businesses are dealing with as they evolve. Think of it as storytelling. Again, this is a safe space. I think so I encourage you guys to be as candid as you're comfortable with. And so let's meet the panelists. And so what I would ask you to do is introduce yourself, your business, what your business does, what your role in the business is, and then your generation. Although
We're gonna just slip to slide.
Oh, all right.
That came from my peanut gallery. Okay, so this is all the things that are happening. And there's your panelist.
Beautiful. All right, so Molly, why don't you start us off? Again, who you are. Oh yeah, we're gonna pass the microphone. There we go.
Okay. Hi, I'm Molly White and I'm the president of U Regatta, and we are a decorated apparel and branded promotional product company located in Falmouth. And we also specialize in online web stores for companies, organizations, nonprofits, things like that. I work with my husband and we're first generation. And did I cover all the questions?
And she won a great door prize.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Sophie Helpin. I am at Batco Financial. We are an independent wealth management firm, also in Falmouth. I'm a financial advisor and certified financial planner. And so is my mom. So I'm technically second generation.
Hi, Jeff Messer. I'm the president and owner of Messer Truck Equipment. We have locations in Westbrook and Columbus, Ohio. Fourth generation, we build work trucks. So a lot of people don't know what that kind of means, but trucks typically come with just a cab and frame rails, bigger trucks. And so we add bodies and hydraulic systems and snow plows and cranes and lift gates and put shelving in cargo vans and ladder racks and basically turn vehicles into usable tools for the trades.
Thanks, Jeff. Rich Hussey with Hussey Seating Company, sixth generation owner and VP of Human Resources for the company. We do spectator seating solutions for the sports and entertainment industry and market, everything from the high school bleacher in public schools to Gillette, where the lousy Patriots are playing this year. Oops, that was an editorial, sorry. Yeah, so when we're mostly domestic, but we dabble in international also.
So I'm Philip Hussey, in addition to being Anne and Rich's nephew. I'm seventh generation owner at Hussey Seating and a vice president at Genmark. And we own and operate a portfolio of small businesses, typically formerly family-owned businesses as well. So, and I guess I'll add, I'm also one of 16 in the seventh generation at Hussey Seating.
So let's meet this. So Philip, why don't you keep that down there? Why don't you start us?
Starting from the end,
Yeah.
We're gonna give you a noogie too.
Why don't you talk a little bit about family? And so when you think about family, like who in the family is involved in the business? What are their roles? And is there a next generation? So you're seventh generation. Are the folks, do we have the eighth generation coming along? This is a total setup for Philip. And then I'm gonna ask you to talk a little bit about the owner structure. So why don't you talk about who's in the family is in the business, and then is there a next generation coming along, and where are they? And then what the ownership structure is.
Sure. So tell me when to stop. So
You know.
so I'll answer the eighth generation first. There is an eighth generation on the way in 5 weeks. My wife and I are having a baby.
Getting
So that's one down. And as far as family members in the business, think probably over the last 30 years, at one point or another, there's probably been 15 to 20 different family members circulate through the business that may be working a school vacation, 2 weeks cleaning equipment, to being the vice president of human resources or the CEO or on the board. So sort of wide swath of engagement from the family perspective in the business. From an involvement, what was the part 3 of the question?
Part 3 is the ownership structure, but if you want to pass that on to Rich.
Sure, I'll let Rich take a shot. So, older and wiser, so. Yeah.
That was half right. You guys can be the judge later. Probably not. Yeah, so we've got a mix of 6th and 7th generation Class A shareholders right now. There's 10 of us, I think, you guys can correct me on my math along the way. And then we have Class B shareholders, non-voting shareholders. That's probably another 10 to 15 folks probably beyond the Class A. And then we have a role also for, the spouses of Class A shareholders have a participatory process as part of that. Do you want me to explain the structure, Annie, of how
Sure.
we're organized?
Yeah, that would be
Okay.
great.
So, as a 7th and soon to be 8th generation, we've come a long way and transitioned and several things. And right now, we have a formal structure with the help of a family business consultant that's helped us put this together over the last 7 years of a family assembly, which includes 5th, 6th, 7th generation and family members. And that's the family assembly. That's about 35 of us. And then we have a family council that's almost like a representative government per se for deciding upon policies and practice for family members, everything from joining the business to social media policy to event planning. We also have an education committee on that to start the process several years ago of ramping up the education for the 7th generation around being a shareholder around the business and engaging the next generation to be ready as we start to transition ownership from the 6th generation to the 7th generation, which we're in that process now. So we've evolved from probably, other generations as just kind of being 1 or 2 leaders at the top figuring things out to now a full-blown kind of structure that really focuses on giving people opportunities besides working in the business, but also to be able to be on these committees that are doing important work, whether it's event planning for our annual family assembly gathering that we do. We're working right now also on, and Philip has been very involved in this, both new shareholder agreement going forward because ours is about to expire and so we're looking at the next 20 years for a Class A, but we're also going to evolve also into a Class B so that people that have an ownership stake without it being a voting stake, that we also have structure and parameters around what that means and our processes documented. So getting a lot of legal help, family business consulting help, and then people from the different generations are participating as we try to build consensus with 35 people. Not always an easy challenge, but we're aligned on the mission, and that really helps to continue our legacy as a family business. So we keep that kind of in mind, and we usually get common ground on issues as we try to evolve.
So I have the inside story on some of this. So just to clarify, the number of owners of Hussey Seating are how many?
So there's 10 Class A shareholders that have the ownership and Class A voting.
Yep.
So, and then Class B.
So somewhere around 20.
So do some math, Philip.
Yeah, another 14.
Another 14 or so that are Class B that have been maybe gifted stock, Class B stock that has a monetary value to it, but they don't have voting rights.
So I think what you'll hear is that's a very different ownership model, perhaps, than what we'll hear from some of the others. So thank you. Why don't you pass that on to Jeff?
Yeah, we're super easy. I own the company. yeah, I mean, it's due to circumstances, and I can share a little bit about that story, but even back to my grandfather, you know, is he, my grandmother, and then my dad, even though he had or still has a sister, she wasn't involved in the business, and so they basically made an estate plan, and, you know, she got the summer camp and he got the business. And when I came to work for my father, I have an older brother and a younger sister. Neither of them had interest in the business, and they had offers for my father, but they chose to work in their own fields and not come back to Maine. And so the plan always was that I would take the business over if I wanted to and continue to do that. Unfortunately, he passed away very unexpectedly when I was about 5 years into my stint working alongside my father. And so the plan just happened a little bit faster and a little bit differently than we had planned initially. So I ended up buying the business from my mother and my father's estate, and then ended up buying the real estate as well. And I think if my father was still alive, it probably would have happened, but just slower. And he probably would have held the real estate for a retirement. But my mother wanted, I think, me to have control of my own destiny, and so she allowed that to happen. And now she's working on her estate, and my brother and sister will be taken care of as well. Even though I wasn't gifted the business, I had to buy it. But that's how we had done it in our family's history, is the next generation just buy it from the previous generation.
And ownership is tied to working in the business or leading the business?
Yes, yeah, it always has been. And, you know, it's interesting, we don't have formal rules, we don't have an advisory board, we don't have a family council, and we've never had that. We're a relatively small company of 35 employees. But where's wrong with that? Yeah, the other family members, they had the option, they chose not to, and so they don't feel like they had to have a vote. I was going to share too. I know Hussey had some rules around coming to work there, and you guys can share that certainly. But having to work in another career, another job prior to coming to the business, and we didn't have that formally, but it's always been the way. And actually, if you look at all 3 generations that have succeeded the original founder, they all have worked or had a military career in different branches, and then worked in a different field, and then come back to the family business. And so that was never set in stone, but it's just the way things have worked out, and I think it really works for us.
It's the best practice for you.
Yeah, absolutely.
What about the next generation?
Yeah, so I have 3 children, but they're 15, 12, and 6. And the 6-year-old is gonna be a monster truck driver. So that's you ask him, that's.
There's some synergy there.
Yeah, and I was telling you, we could probably build some of those for you. But no, I'm a firm believer in teaching our kids entrepreneurial skills. And so my oldest actually started a business at age 7, caring for bees and harvesting honey and selling her honey. And so she continues to do that to this day. We moved the bees out to the island, and so she does that out there in the summertime. But I would love for them to come back in the business, but certainly we're not forcing them into that. They're gonna go do what they want to do, and if they want to come back and certainly be able to work in the business and take it to the next generation.
Great, thank you. Sophie.
So Backhoe Financial is a team of 12 people. We have 5 staff people and then 7 advisors. So we're different structure than all of the companies so far, in that 6 of the 7 advisors are technically our own LLC, and pay into Backhoe Financial, which pays staff salaries. So an even more complicated system, maybe.
And it's you and your mom.
Yeah, so my mom and I are technically separate LLCs. This is where it gets muddy, but we have our own books of clients, and then over the past year or so, we've also been building up our shared business together.
Nice.
Yeah.
And any 3rd generations coming along?
There's no next gen plan. We'll see what happens, but I think the plan is that it will probably be an outside of the family, hiring and training an associate advisor in the future for selling my business. So it's someone who's aligned.
Awesome, thanks.
Yeah.
And Molly,
Right. Well, we're a lot smaller. Well, Sophie and I are kind of the same. So I joined my husband in the company in 2019. He had started it and I left my teaching career to join him. And so it was him and then it was me. And then we hired a third party who's now our vice president of business development. And now we're up to 9 employees since 2019. So he runs kind of he's the owner, the founder. He runs the financial piece, the bigger picture, how to grow the business, where we're going in the business. And then I am more of the day-to-day. I am the sales, I am the staff manager, the forward-facing customer relations, day-to-day operations. Pretty much when I came in, ordering, shipping, receiving, trimming out embroidery, I kind of have touched it all. So, but now I'm more in a managerial position. And so, to answer the question also, there is no plan for a next generation. I'm a lot older than I look, I've been told, so. Yeah, and so we're the co-owners. So a little bit more straightforward, I guess.
yes and no. I mean, working with your spouse,
Is a challenge.
that's called 24/7. All right, so let's talk a little bit about leadership. And so some of you have experienced transitions in your business and some of you not yet. So let's kind of focus on those that have. And what did you learn? How did it go? Was it a planned event? Was it, Jeff, I think you shared it was sudden. And, were there any key learnings about a family business passing on, the mantle to a next generation?
Yeah, I'm trying to think where I should go with this. So I kind of cut my teeth as far as leadership goes in the Navy. So I went to the Naval Academy, which they call kind of a leadership laboratory, got to experiment with that, and then went to the fleet and was on a couple of ships, but had a division and got to manage 20 to 40 guys at sea. And so got the skills I needed to step in to a shop here in Maine and be able to manage techs on the shop floor. And so I felt like I was prepared to be able to step into that. And I think my father did it right when I came back to work with him, is that he started me kind of at the ground level on the shop floor, working alongside the guys, understanding that, and then transitioning to other departments. And so I worked in parts for about 1.5 years, did some inside sales, did operations. I was doing like our credit card processing contracts and some of our uniform contracts behind the scenes, kind of working towards that goal of taking the business over. And as I said before, that happened way sooner than we had expected. And kind of a funny story that I tell, after my father had passed away and kind of like stepped into that leadership role running the company, our company accountant had called up and said, hey, what can I do to help? If you want to just send over the financials, if you send me the P&L, I'd just like to see where you're at and I can make recommendations. And I had no idea what P&L was. I Googled P-N-L, the 3 letters, and yeah. I studied engineering in college and knew nothing about financials or business or anything like that. So I think that was probably my biggest learning curve, was trying to understand how to run a business and how to read financials and just make sure that our cash was flowing and that we were a viable entity. But thankfully, my father had a lot of seasoned managers in place. Everything from our sales manager, parts, service manager had been there for 30, 40 years. And so they were firmly entrenched in the business and understood how to run it. And so that definitely bought me some time, to figure things out and keep.
Jeff, sometimes we separate ownership from leadership because they can be done by different people. In your case, you're the owner and the leader, right? Have you ever had a non-family person at the top?
No, and that's an interesting question too, because I found after being in that role for a few years, so I've been in the business 20 years now, I've been at the helm for 15 years. Early on, everything was going across my desk. I was in the day-to-day and firmly involved in just about every decision. I found that was stunting the growth of the business, that just my personality, I needed to get out of the business. And so solicited advice from some outside people and started taking a few days off and working from home. This is even pre-pandemic, just trying to get away from the environment. So people were forced to kind of answer their own questions and figure out things for themselves. And recently brought in a general manager to run day-to-day operations in both Maine and Ohio. Certainly I can't run the business in Ohio, the day-to-day there, but it's been great. It allows me to act more as the visionary rather than the integrator, if you know, kind of the OS model. And after reading Rocket Fuel, if you haven't read that book, it's really pretty powerful. I thought I was the integrator actually all along, and then I read Rocket Fuel and I was, oh, I'm the visionary. I got angry, yeah, because if there's a tie, the integrator wins, and I was like, uh-oh, that's not good. It's my business. So yeah, I mean, there's definitely a lot of growing that I've done in the last 15 years, and understanding how to grow a business. And it doesn't necessarily mean you have to do everything. You need to find people that are smarter than you to be able to continue to advance it.
Thank you.
That's right.
On that smarter than you theme, we have I think an interesting story in our history is really in the last 7 years. So in terms of transition, leadership. So my brother, Tim, Philip's dad, and Anne's brother, tragically passed away as the CEO and president in 2016. And for the first time in the company's 100, at the time, I guess 180 or so year business, we made the decision to put a first non-family member into the CEO role. And it was the right choice. It was the most logical choice. And we stepped back as shareholders and said, from a shareholder perspective, we should be having the right person running the business, regardless of family interest or not. But it was also a case where my brother Tim was also the head of the board and really organized all of our family assembly stuff, because we had some structure around that, a family forum structure at the time, mostly 6th generation and 7th coming along into it. So we had to redo and rethink almost all of our shareholder agreements, bylaws, some structures that we had legally that needed to be updated, because it really, when you started to peel back the onion on having a non-family CEO, we also then had a family board member, a family member who's not in the business, step in to chair the board. So those were two really, really different things for the family. And again, we had some help with a very good family business consultant that helped, be the honest broker on all those issues. We also, realized it was an opportunity to get further engagement from other family members in both generations, and that structure that I referenced around the family assembly, family council, shareholder group, and integrating 7th generation into those processes all began to get codified really after that. And I think, listening to Jeff talk about our rule about entering the business, it was always informal too, but we took the time knowing that we were going to have 35, 36 maybe now coming soon, that we really wanted to take a chance to document and reset our our values and our processes and everything from, you know, an employment policy to, like I said, anything, social media. When people could spouses come to these sessions, and we were very focused on the family. But I think one of the things that have evolved a little bit is that a lot of our focus shifted to the family members being really good shareholders and potentially board members. If the employment piece happens to work out, that's great. But one of the things that we said along the way, and having success with our non-family CEO as well, was we don't require the CEO. It's nice if the CEO is a family member, but we want the best CEO. And so we kind of looked at it more from a shareholder, who do you want to be running the day-to-day business? There are a lot of long stories, and Philip probably has a perspective on that as well, but that event forced us in the first time in history, and then we really had to redo and create a lot of structure. And I think it's ultimately made us stronger, probably as a group of 35, as we've evolved that way, but it was significant change in a very tough reason for needing to change. And so it's been very interesting. It was after that I came back to the company, and I have a cousin working in the business as well. But a lot of our focus and leadership in family spots right now is around these other places that we have, the family council and heads the different committees, and we've got more engagement now from family members that live out in Ohio are involved in planning events for the family events and those type of things. So it's evolved kind of quickly and probably has set us up for some good structured approaches going forward, but it wasn't an easy process, and it was kind of unique. So
A real example of merit-based leadership then. It didn't matter what the last name was, it really mattered, that the person.
Most qualified.
Yep.
Yeah, so that was a change. Traditional family business, as we talk about the branches, and that happens. But we realized that at that time that it was the right person. And interesting, the person that took the CEO job, Gary Merrill, was about as close to family as we could have. We had all known him he'd been in the business 30 years. He'd been the CFO. We all had a personal relationship with him. With that, it would have been a lot harder if it was like hiring someone from the outside. But one of the incredible things that my brother Tim did while he was knew his fate with the illness that he had was work out this incredible focused transition plan that included, the senior leadership and all of that, and meeting with the family, the sixth generation and seventh generation, to actually be the lead voice in a transition while he was going through that awful disease. And it was just incredible. And it set the path for us to move forward, and really had success as a business, and I think as a family, really came together a lot, despite that tough circumstance, and maybe because of that tough circumstance. So.
And proof that Maine is a small town. Gary is my dad's cousin.
And he just recently retired, and we've now transitioned to a second non-family CEO, which, the transition again, because it was someone internally, Brian DeVoe, took over in July and came from the CFO role. Again, we've learned lessons, and we had a very integrated process where both the board and the family were involved in how that selection, how that process went about. So.
Thank you.
I can add.
You want to add to it, Philip? Okay.
I think, and I believe it was my great-grandfather, Rich and Anne's grandfather, who actually set us up for a successful transition in 2016, long before, my dad probably was 15, 10, something like that, in establishing an independent board. And with most of our history, 4 outside directors, 3 family members. But when 2016, when my dad passed in 2016, we didn't have necessarily a ready-made solution to come out of the box and say, hey, here's the new family structure. But what we did have was governance system for the business that had been in place and that everybody had coalesced around for the last 30+ years. So while the family had a lot of sort of work to do on what our structure looked like, the business was taken care of. And so particularly for this context, it's an interesting thing to think about, that 40 years from now, you could be helping your grandchildren out just by having an independent board, even if it doesn't seem to make sense, because at the time, can you hear me still on? If at the time, my great-grandfather, your grandfather was, I believe, the only owner of the business. It wasn't a sort of 35-person shareholder group, maybe a 3-person group. So yeah, that's the one piece I'd add there.
And I think that it's an important point, Philip. I think by governance, and it's a fiduciary board, that we have a maximum, that we have a majority of outside board member, whether it's 4 or 5, and then some defined family seats, which we have criteria for that as well. So I think it's been a big part. It helped us with that transition because we had all this outside high-level expertise helping us in that transition on the board and management.
Thank you. So let's move the mic down this way. Thank you. So one of the things, actually, I was going to get to that a little earlier, a little later, but you preempted me, which is great. So one of the best practices for businesses, family businesses that are growing is having that objectivity, that outside perspective. And there are a number of different ways to do it. Sometimes it's really just looking at informal advisors, somebody, it might be your tax person or your lawyer, or it might be an HR consultant that you touch base with periodically. But having that outside perspective, kind of that objectivity is really important. And there's so many different ways to do it. There's also an advisory board, and then you've heard about the fiduciary board. And I wonder, Molly, do you and your husband have any outside counsel that you refer to for various situations?
I would say that, we have ourselves, and we do a lot of decision making, as I said, with our third party, our vice president. So the 3 of us are kind of the main decision makers. And then we have a staff of people that we have meetings multiple times a week to talk through those decisions. And then, we do have like an outside counsel and, a financial piece as well. But I would say that right now we're in the small enough size that we can make those decisions as a team.
You're probably absolutely right. There's 9 of you, is that right? Yeah. Sophie, what do you and your mom do? How do you have any outside counsel of any kind?
Yeah, we do. Well, of course, there's like your community and, a CPA we trust, an attorney we trust. There's all of those important people in your lives. The other advisors in the office, we have a really collaborative shared mission and vision and an investment review process. So it really is a team environment there, which I think is pretty unique in the financial advising world, which is nice. But as far as kind of outside advice, we rely on our broker dealer a lot. We're Commonwealth, they partner with independent advisors. So we rely on them for compliance, checks, and as well as research and just about anything we could need help with. Technology, that's probably the big one. And then like all of our professional designations, we constantly have to redo our education every year. We're both financial planners, so there's a lot of education credits we have to continually be upping to kind of stay in line. So I think there's a lot of standards in the financial industry, which is good. So there's a lot of people kind of checking our work.
So again, it's a different way of getting
A different way though, yes.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yes, we don't have a formal board of directors or a board of advisors, but we do have a lot of long-term relationships with our accountant, our corporate attorney, labor attorney, our fractional CFO. Funny story about our corporate attorney. We were actually think his first client in like 1972 when he started to practice law, and he just retired last year. And so
Wow.
he represented us that entire time. I started with my grandfather and my father and myself. And so it's cool to have relationships like that. And actually, when we transitioned the business after my father's passing, it was really helpful to bring all those people together. We brought the accountant, the estate planning attorney, the corporate attorney, and they knew the whole history. They've been with us for a long time, and they were able to kind of put the pieces together. And it's incredibly helpful to have those relationships.
Well, especially when you went through that transition
Mm.
where, you know, kind of on the job, in the firing line type of thing.
You know, and I'll talk about peer groups too. So my father was involved in a club of other truck equipment business owners, non-competitive around the country. And he had built incredible friendships with these other business owners to the point that they offered actually to come to Maine and to help me run the business after my father's passing. And I would call them routinely and just ask questions like, what did you hear? What do you think of this? And so I've used that model as I got involved in the business, not only through the Institute for Family Business and the next gen peer groups, but Doug Packard in the back, a business coach, you know, through his work with executive forums and just sitting with other business owners. I found it's incredibly effective because our businesses are more alike, but they're different. All the challenges we have, that you can have those conversations and ask those questions. What do you do with this? Because it can be lonely at the top when you don't have that sounding board.
Very true.
We probably got ahead and answered this already.
Yeah.
So much for the prep session.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks.
It's Philip's fault.
So let's talk a little bit about the business structure. We've talked about family governance in terms of family councils or family assemblies or ownership groups. But in terms of the business and how the business is aligned with the family. And so thinking about mission, vision, and values, thinking about, you know, strategic planning, you know, some of those things that are going to help make businesses more successful. Do we want to start down? Where's the microphone? Okay, go ahead. No, go ahead. Why don't you guys, you know, Rich and Philip, do you want to?
Yeah, sure.
Tackle
I'll
that a
start
bit.
and we can maybe tag team here, Philip. I think one of the, so we have a pretty, you know, typical business structure. We have about 300 employees and vice presidents to report into the CEO. That's pretty normal stuff that we have. I think we do a few things to connect the shareholders with the board and management. But one of the things that we did to part of this forming and storming where we had some new governance structures and things of that nature, we actually ended up creating a matrix of responsibilities. And that can be helpful in business sometimes too, about who's the decision maker, who gets input, who's told afterwards. So we have this playbook about making sure you're wearing the right hat. So when I'm working in the business in HR, I'm not supposed to have my owner hat. It's hard. It's a challenge sometimes, but I'm there as the head of HR, not as an owner. So, and it's important, I think, because you can give mixed signals within the business, depending on your intent on those type of things, or the size of the business can be an impact. So we've delineated out exactly what the board's decision authority is versus what's a shareholder one. Where should the shareholders have input? Where should we at least know something so we don't hear about it in the grocery store that we've done something, made some decision that things get around Maine pretty quick. So we've worked on the communication vehicles for that. So we've got one that's an active 2-page that lists out all the different type of decisions that get made between management, board, and family assembly versus the, you know, shareholder group too. So that has been really helpful to get us all on the same page to know our expectations and what the roles are. The other thing that we've implemented, you know, before this transition, I think, is that we have it's probably been a decade or so, that we have an annual letter that goes from the Class A shareholders that lay out expectations for the board. We do formally vote the board members in, so it is our role as shareholders, but one of the things we do is we have an iterative process kind of back and forth, but we annually update long-term goals, short-term goals, core values, what's important to us. If we need to weigh in on a certain topic, like the question on even succession planning about being a family member or not, et cetera. We've kind of clarified that in formal documentation with our board. And then we meet as a shareholder group. We have at least one formal time a year where we're meeting face to face. And we've done sessions where we do almost like speed dating around the table, where they go from one table to another to get shareholders that aren't involved in the business to know the board better. We did one of those processes with the senior leaders in the company this year. So while everyone knows, it's on paper kind of what lanes to stay in, we're also working on the relationships and clarifying the expectations. And that can flow up to the shareholders from management needing clarification on the board as well as down. So it's kind of all those things can be iterative kind of discussions, but has some structure to it too.
Philip, would you be willing to speak to the kind of the mission, vision, values?
Going to be put on the spot here on the exact word verbiage, but I think on the from a family perspective to the board, all the way down to the senior management and the employees, it's pretty clear, and the family's incredibly clear that we're a family business and we're in it for the long haul. And so that sort of buy-in on the family level is critical because it impacts how that board letter gets written, how that decision matrix gets made, and then how the management team at the company is going to operate the business. So if the family is universally bought in on that and sort of all our actions align with that, everything flows much easier. I think the second piece I would add on the matrix front that Richard talked about was not only helpful from the shareholders, but I bet if you ask Jeff's cousin Gary, he would tell you that's the best thing that's ever been invented, right? And so as shareholders, we want to make sure, particularly if it's not a family member leading the company, that we can attract the best talent. And so being able to say, hey, here are the decisions that you as CEO or you as a CFO or et cetera, a senior leader in our company get to make, and the family acknowledges that's not their role. It's a lot easier for us to go out and recruit top talent so they don't think that family's going to get in and sort of meddle with decisions that we really have probably no knowledge of or experience making. So
That's a great point.
Yeah,
That doesn't mean they don't want to try to do that sometimes.
Right, but now we have an honest broker process there with that, having all decided, hey, we said we're not gonna get engaged in this, and to Philip's point, since I'm leading the charge on recruiting a lot, I would underscore that too. And it comes up with experienced candidates that may have some trepidation about a family business. So we actually arm our recruiter with that type of knowledge, that we have a matrix and that we stay in our lanes and those type of things.
Thanks. Jeff, how about you?
Well, I was gonna say, I don't want to put Philip on the spot, but I think Chenmark does this really well as far as in having corporate mission, vision, values, and then having that trickle down to all their companies. I don't know if you want to talk to that at all.
So in the other family business hat, I guess, that I'm wearing, at Chenmark, we own and operate 10 standalone businesses. And so we have core values at the Chenmark level that as operators of any given business, you sort of buy into, but you're not forced to sort of take verbatim those values and implement them. And I'll use an example. One of my peers, he runs a pirate cruise and dolphin cruise in the Florida Panhandle, right? And so Chenmark's values, we talk about chasing better every day and sort of the constant pursuit of incremental improvement. That doesn't really make sense for a dolphin cruise, right? Their sort of mantra is delight customers. But in our mindset, it's, hey, how can we incrementally improve the customer experience every day, right? And so flowing those values down, even if it's sort of twisting them a little bit to make it work for whatever vertical we're in.
Now you got me warmed up and I want to comment on one more thing. Sorry. No, I want to come back to the core values, starting at family and actually flowing down to the employees. We only have 3 in the business, and I could wordsmith them wrong too, so don't worry about that. But the in it for the long run is one we only have 3, which you can be cynical about core values. I get it. There's a generic list of 8 wonderful things, but we've got 3, but we actually that in it for the long run, particularly during COVID, we made decisions that we're thinking about instead of maximizing profits this quarter, this year, being all aligned, that we're looking also, I mean, yeah, we want to make money this quarter, this month, but we're also thinking about 5-10 years from now, we're going to be here and we're going to be strong, and we're committed to that. That tangibly drove some decisions. That's one core value we talk a lot about with our employees, is that we can make decisions for the long run because we don't have a quarterly stock value and then being told to cut costs. So that one we actually flows from the family. And I would say the other ones around integrity and empowerment are nice, but that in it for the long run piece runs right from the family values all the way to man. We talk about that as a management group when we're looking at making decisions. And it might, and again, tangibly made a difference. We held on to resources during COVID because we were in it for the long run and we were confident it was going to be over at some point. And I remember our CEO, Gary, at the time talking to employees about being in it for the long run. And this was maybe one of the best lines I've ever heard in an employee meeting. He was trying to reassure the workforce, and he said, hell, this isn't even our first pandemic. We'll be fine. So in it for the long run.
So a few years back, made some bad hiring decisions and really harmed our company culture. It was probably a low point for me, and came to the realization that I was really the chief culture officer and had to rebuild that culture to make it a place that I wanted to work and that everyone else wanted to work. And so we built that back up, and really happy with how far we've come, but felt like we needed to go back over our company core values. And we were living them, but I don't think we had put them down on paper and kind of put a word to it. And so that was an exercise we did last year, which was great because I think we had that culture, we just had to put some words to it. And then now, whenever we do any sort of employee recognition, we always point to what value they're being recognized for. When you catch someone doing something right, you tie it to a company value. Just, you're living those anyways, why not point it out and just help other people to live that as well. But yeah, absolutely something you have to look at every year, make sure you're continuing to live that and that it describes your culture and what you're doing.
Do you think your employees know what the values are?
We're working on that. No, I mean, I think there's a spectrum. Certainly the more engaged employees certainly know what they are and they live them, and then some others, they're there for a paycheck, but you're working towards everyone being fully engaged.
Terrific.
I think I remember the question. So our mission, or our tagline is honest, independent, experienced. So our mission is, be driven to do what's in the client's best interest and to measure our success by the positive impact we have in people's lives. And so that has really truly become the core of Backco Financial, and everything that we do has to trickle down from that. So, Backco Financial outwardly facing, we're one team, and that's really important. So we've done a lot of work over the past 5 years to really think strategically and sometimes have difficult conversations about what does branding look like if we are, 6 advisors with independent businesses. How do we all align on this mission so that each client is getting the same experience? When they call the office, they're being treated the same way, no matter who they work with. The investments are held to the same high level. So we've been doing a lot of work on that and using outside opinions, using a marketing team that we really trust to help us have those conversations and facilitate. And I think it's shown in our kind of branding and the way that everyone on the team is now really bought in. The culture is definitely very strong because because we talk about our mission, we have it on the wall. It's, you know, in everything we do, all of our team lunches, we're usually doing something to give back to the community, and we really want people to be in it for the long haul and to get why we as advisors have chosen to create this environment.
Have you found that it's quite an evolutionary process?
Yes. Yeah. Like, yes. I think one of the big driving forces over the past 2 or 3 years especially was we got B Corp certification. So the team of advisors were all kind of unspoken on the same page, and going through that process, we realized that, you know, you could hire new people and things could change, or things are evolving all the time, and we really needed to put things in writing so that our culture stuck and was expressed in a way that was gonna, you know, last for the long run. So that process really helped us do that, like making a staff handbook, making the staff, you know, read it and sign it and see, like, not as punishment, it's a short staff handbook, but really because there's like good benefits and good protections for them in there. And we realized that we all share these important values, but we needed to tell people that and write it down.
That's awesome. Molly, how about you?
So I would say, I mean, smaller staff. So I would say that our staff is pretty knowledgeable of our mission and our core values. We've sat and talked about it as a staff in team meetings and things like that. We worked to refine it together, add pieces that were important to each of our staff members. For example, so our goal is, you know, to be the best at what we do and like the go-to for people that want, you know, decorated items, to be knowledgeable in our field and, you know, provide the best product as possible, but also recognizing that nobody's perfect and, you know, things can get messed up, but to do the right thing and do the best for our customers. But the other piece is that, you know, something that's really important to a lot of our staff members is like our environmental impact. And so we, you know, worked to put that into our vision as well and be environmentally conscious in our procedures and items that we represent. So I would say that ours is kind of a collaborative piece.
And so did you involve all of your employees, your whole team in that as you were kind of building that out?
So, I mean, the original mission started with Carter when he started the company, and it's evolved as the business has evolved. It's a very different entity than it was in the beginning. So we had the original mission and vision statement, and then we as a team got together and kind of, you know, took paper and pen and just, you know, cut it up and reworked it, and what do you call it, like operation, like cut and paste.
Well, it does seem that they get dusted off and revised on a pretty regular basis.
And it's important to do that too, I mean, for sure.
Yeah. Great. So not wanting to say that family businesses are rife with conflict, but there's certainly enough opportunity. And so I'm just curious, communication, conflict, and then policies. What do you guys have in place to help navigate through those kind of sticky times?
That's a good one, especially when you work with your husband. So one thing that's pretty important, and that's I think been a challenge for me, is like setting times when those communications and conversations happen, and keeping like the business part in the business and like maybe not at the dinner table at home. So that's been, you know, something that's been hard for me because I'm like, when I get an idea, I want to discuss it right now. You know, we have policies in place, and we do challenge each other, and our staff can challenge us as well. And we have a pretty open format where we're accepting of people that we work with opinions and taking that into account. Because in the end, we want to do what's right for our business and what's going to lead us to success as a whole team.
Awesome. Sophie, how about you guys?
Yeah, I think to Molly's point, the best thing that we have going for us is open communication. It really is just letting each other know, I mean, with my mom and I specifically, like letting each other know what we need, having healthy boundaries, which looks different for everybody. And it can happen with colleagues that you're not related to as well. Just knowing like what is somebody's comfort zone for talking about work. When is it appropriate to stop talking about that? It's evolving, but I think we've gotten quite good at saying like, okay, let's finish this conversation on Monday. And just knowing that that is a no hard feelings situation. It just means that I want to enjoy our personal relationship right now.
So being really clear. you know,
Yes.
Kind of what your needs are, what your expectations are, and being respectful to the other person as well.
Exactly. And we have that communication with staff too. I think, our whole thing that we want is to be welcoming when clients come in for staff. So that open conversation is really key. And of course, the policies and the handbook and all of that is in place to back it up, but it's really just about communicating with people.
I think, working in a multi-generational business, so for the most part, it's Molly, it's you and your husband, it's you and your mother, it's you. So, but I think, working with a parent is a very different situation than perhaps working with a spouse or being large and in charge, or so, have you guys discovered anything that has worked really well or things that have, kind of surprised you in that?
I don't know. We've learned a lot about each other over the past 6.5 years. Our boundaries and communications have gotten much better. It's tricky. Yeah, we've definitely just improved. I think as my business has grown, as Sarah has mentored me, and now having this like mutual respect for each other and the skills that we each bring to the table is like a very beautiful next kind of chapter in our relationship. So I think that going with the flow too, like there have been many stages to us working together over the past 6.5 years now. So just kind of letting that flow, I guess, and reassessing.
Good for you. I can't picture working with my mother. So, and I love her, but I just can't picture working with her. So anyway, Jeff, how about you?
Yeah, I was gonna share, so 20 years ago, when I went to work for my father, we had gone to a trade show and there's an educational session. It was a father-son team in the industry and they were working on like 13 commandments of working with your father and son. And so we adopted that. And I remember one of them was like, I'll always love you, but I may not always employ you. Another one was, I'm dad at home, I'm John at the office. And we followed that. And so I would always, call my dad by his first name and, try to have a cordial relationship. But a couple of times I had to shut the office door and tell him how messed up he was and how I knew all the answers, after being in the business for a year. But looking back, I realized that, I probably got a few things wrong. But no, I think you have to set those ground rules because it's very important because you don't want to damage that relationship that is going to last forever. So that's important. And then dealing with a spouse. So my wife is on the payroll. She works kind of special projects, I'll call it. But at one time we entertained the idea of bringing her in as my sales manager. She has a sales background and 100% she could do that job, but could she and I work together? Probably not. So I think it's wise that she continues to do special projects.
Healthy marriage.
What's that?
A healthy marriage.
Yes. And she made the decision when we started having kids to stay at home and thankfully had the finances to support that. And so she's done an amazing job raising our 3 kids.
That's great.
Yeah, I often talk about the
Project.
yes. I also talk about the business being kind of like the 4th child too. That's the child that I'm taking care of and hopefully nurturing and continuing to grow.
My mother used to refer to it as the mistress.
Spending late nights.
Rich and Philip?
We've never had any family disagreement in 188 years, I'm proud to say.
Liar.
So coming from the perspective that I had, Philip's dad gave me my performance review 9 years in a row. So, but I think one of the things we do is trying to focus on maintaining and building relationships. We make a point to get together, for a big family assembly, with that whole group of fifth, sixth, seventh generation and family members. Once a year, we're looking at moving it maybe to every other year because the seventh generations get pretty spread out on their careers across the country. But we make it a point to have, a 3-day event that's oftentimes at a nice resort somewhere within driving distance of Maine. So we work a little business into it, but then heavy on the relationship building. I would also say, similar to the other comments, we put down on paper our behavioral expectations of how to, in these different groups we have, to handle conflict. And I think when it does come up, if it gets to a point where it doesn't feel as safe and productive, this is where, again, a family business consultant that we have that can help us with the shareholder agreement, but can also mediate the philosophical differences between two people in the business or two shareholders. And that seems to be a safe spot, because again, a neutral resource. So there isn't a family bias that, well, you're on that family tree on that side, so that's why you never agree with me. That can get mediated pretty quickly. And so between kind of naming how we want to handle conflict and then having resources, but I think the biggest thing is working on the family relationship so that when you're wearing that hat as family, it will make you, just like any relationship in business, if it's stronger, you're going to be able to manage any differences better. So, and it's certainly exacerbated when it's family, so it's more important to do.
Yeah, so besides the no conflict that we've had,
We have these things in place, but we never have to use them.
I think typically, so I've been more involved, let's say, in the last 6 or 7 years, but aware sort of my entire life or that I can remember. And so typically, like probably most conflict in most workplaces, it's less about the actual issue and more of just how something is communicated or responded to. And so I particularly as more of my generation comes in to the business and the shareholder group, just to continuing to focus on sort of how we treat each other. We can get through any sort of disagreement on policy or program or procedure, sort of no problem to get over that. But if we slip into our sort of uncle, nephew, or father, son, or cousin relationship versus shareholder relationship, that's when normally conflict arises, and people leave the room with their arms crossed if they feel like they weren't heard or respected or listened to. If you can solve that, then the conflict piece is virtually non-existent.
One thing we did once, and then we probably will do it again at some point, we did a communication training with our shareholders. We talked about the different communication styles. We used a behavioral profile, predictive index, and we spent a whole session trying to improve on our communication and did a survey on, that actually the survey is what led us to believe that we needed to do some of that. And I think probably doing that every few years, bringing that back up, something we'll continue to do.
And the last thing I'd add, and if I can, so my second cousin, Anne and Rich's cousin, is the chair of our board, and one thing she does, and chair sort of runs our sort of family shareholder meetings. One thing she does incredibly well is make sure everyone gets to speak and is heard. And so no one's really bulldozed over, but she'll say, all right, Olivia, what did you want to say? It looks like you wanted to say something. And just providing that space is incredibly valuable. So everybody, again, has that opportunity. And she sort of has adopted that role of making sure everyone gets heard, which is awesome.
I know that sometimes out of conflict, policies or have been created. And I'm gonna ask, Rich and Philip, can you talk about a couple of policies that are in place because of the conflict that was not had?
I guess I guess one thing that comes to mind, and I don't know if it was stemmed specifically from conflict, but making sure that those of us working in the business were on the same page. We did create a code of conduct on how we were gonna both represent the family in the business with high standards, and also how we were gonna deal working with each other around giving each other the benefit of the doubt. There's about a list of like 15 things that we commit to, and my nephew that's joining the business is gonna have to sign that in a week and a half, and he knows that before we interviewed him. So you sign off that this is how we're gonna operate, and it's meant to kind of avoid conflict, but it sets a common standard. But I think some of that came out of just, the people in the business having some different views of, was the other person pulling their weight or up to the standards that we expect, and those type of things that led to, again, jotting it down on paper to be able to pull it out and say, hey, we all agreed to this. Is everyone holding up their end? So that's one specific example.
I'm not sure I have another one. I guess a silly one, but it's so there's occasionally sports tickets. Being in the seating business, you sometimes come across sports tickets, right? And the family gets access to those. But how do you get, if you get 8 seats to a game, how do you give them out? And if you only get 8 seats to one game or 2 games per year, and you have 35 family members, how do you give those out, right, in a way that's fair? So a situation like that comes up, and maybe in the past, it used to just be sort of willy-nilly handed out. Turns out it's better to draw out of a hat. So now Rich gets to control the hat drawing. I don't believe it's recorded, so we just trust Rich. You think something as silly as a sports ticket, that doesn't matter, get over it. Turns out it matters, right? Because it's a sense of fairness and equality. So is that what you're looking for, Ann?
Yeah, that was a
I'd
great
like to point out that at the last game, Philip got all 6 tickets, so I don't know what his aspersions onto me are or but as someone, I head up the family council right now, and it is something that does have a lot of energy. So even documenting how we, no one wants that, or do you get 2 seats? Can you give it away? Can you not give it away? What's the intent and the purpose? Those type of things that do matter. Agree.
Yes, thank you. So one of the things that I think we hear oftentimes from employees is that they like to work in family businesses. They're happier working for a family business because of the culture. And I wonder if you could talk a little bit about the culture of your company and kind of how you think that might be true there.
Okay. Well, I mean, I think mine's a little bit different because, I mean, it's not a family culture, but we work really hard to ensure that we have a strong relationship with all of our employees, and we really work hard on the team building aspect of it, and making sure that everybody is heard, and that we do things that are fun. We definitely have like a very laid back, easygoing and like welcoming and accepting environment in our workspace, which I think is important because we're a pretty eclectic group. There's a variety of ages, interests, etc., backgrounds, but we make sure to do fun things. We go axe throwing, and we we have our wind down Fridays, and go bowling, or eventually we need to take them sailing. But we make a huge deal about everybody's birthday, and especially if you're a person that absolutely hates your birthday, it's gonna be worse. Like poor Bill got a walker with balloons and streamers. Like it was pretty epic because he was like, I hate my birthday. So so we're just like working on that. Like and it's also really important with like just having that communication piece and like the daily check-ins, and coming in and saying good morning to everyone and asking them how their evening was or their weekend was, and that piece. We have that sort of thing going on, and I think that's what helps build our culture.
Thank you. Sophie, how about the same for you?
Yeah, I would echo a lot of what Molly said. I think, so there's 3 partners at Badco Financial. My mom is one of them. Jack is another, and his son just joined the business recently. And then the third, Christina, her husband is kind of our tech guy. He's kind of a special projects kind of guy. So there's a lot of family going on, and I think that's why it was so easy for everyone to kind of agree that values were going to be our driving force for what we do, because when you work with family, I think a lot of that comes out of wanting that deep trust and respect for people, wanting to like the people you work with and care about the people you work with. So that is at the core, and the birthday cakes and like fun events and all of that kind of comes off of that.
Awesome, thanks.
Yeah, I mean, I think to echo all that, I mean, being family owned, we try to treat everyone like family, and you compare that to private equity or even a publicly traded company, and obviously they have rules and a fairly rigid handbook, and we have a handbook too, but I feel like we have the ability to not be so rigid. So if a issue comes up and family gets sick or they need to be out, then you work with them, figure out what it's going to take to get them through that issue, and you treat everyone like family, and then you celebrate as well. Have a good time. We have summer parties and Christmas parties, and then if we achieve a monthly goal, we'll do kind of a company lunch or do some sort of fun activity. And I think people enjoy that as well. And just celebrating milestones, births of children. We've had that a couple of times. I just had an employee buy a house, their first house, and in this market, we definitely celebrated that. Had a housewarming party for them too. So I think as a family-owned business, you have that flexibility to treat everything.
Exactly. Don't underestimate the value of that either.
Probably continue with the same themes. One of the things we do is we participate in the best places to work survey, and one of the really cool things is just that open-ended comments section that you get from that process. So we hear consistently about why people would recommend someone else or why they like to work at Hussey, that it's the family environment. And while I feel good about it, that as a family member, it's way beyond the family component of it, of the Hussey family. And in our case, because we've been around so long, we have multi-generational welders, second, third generation welders, second, third generation, assembly, other parts of the company, accounting, other areas. So we have a wall of fame that has people with more than 25 years experience. And actually we just had 2 retirees in the last couple of years that were 45 years of tenure, and one was ahead of the other as the longest tenured employee because his buddy had held the door for him when they walked in to apply for the job. And that was the only way they could split it. But so and the other story that I use sometimes as an example, we had a female employee in manufacturing whose apartment had a fire, and before any Hussey family member could organize, the entire workforce passed around a can, old school, and raised $2,000 for her, like in 24 hours. And she was just in tears about how appreciative. And we didn't have to go ask our employees, and hey, our core value is this, you need to do it. They just did it, and it wasn't Hussey family driven at all. So I think that kind of spirit in the business is we appreciate it. We know that's not easy to get, that caring from employee to employee exists. And some of the ways we celebrate that is we are very focused on milestones and tenure because of that factor in the business. So we recognize every employee meeting, we read off milestones, 5, 10, 15, 25 years. We have a recognition luncheon next week where everyone that reached a milestone is going to all come together, and we'll make fun of the people that turned 25 years and roast them. And then we also have a family holiday party that gets, every kid, of one of our employees, if they've signed up, gets a gift, and we do it at Noble High School and have Santa come, and it's actually interesting, one of our suppliers is Santa Claus every year. He's one of our steel suppliers that we've had a long relationship with, comes in as Santa on his own time every year. So it's kind of cool, and we really try hard not to take that for granted.
Rich, what about, was it last month, you had an event?
Oh, yeah. So one of the things, thank you. One of the things we've been working hard on is the manufacturing versus the office split, sometimes even on the same campus, can be really challenging. COVID made it worse, not a lot of interactions as possible. One of the things we put back into place this year, and just had an awesome day, we took a day out of the work week and had Hussey games, which is basically 2 or 3 minute games, and we put 8 to 10 people were on a team. They all wore different colored hats, and we made the rosters of the team. So we had manufacturing, working with engineers, working with salespeople on teams, and really tried to break down the barriers that can exist sometimes in different functions. And you would have thought that by the end of the Olympics, the games, you would have thought people known each other 20 years, that it just maybe were new hires and didn't even know each other that well. So we took a whole day, and people did end up doing some work, but we paid them basically to either be on the team or stay and cheer. And we got a sunny day, and we did a employee meeting, but then we had 3 hours of just having fun together. And
And a cookout.
And a cookout. And certain family members showed up on a scooter carrying the Olympic torch to kick off the events. It was a blast. And so we're going to continue to do those, of bringing people together.
So I guess I can speak to working in Genmark is also a family-owned business, so I can speak as an employee of a family-owned business. One thing that the partners at Genmark are a husband and wife, James and Trish, and James's brother Palmer. And so they started the operation 10 years ago. And now one thing that they focus a lot on, from new hire to talking about, weekly, monthly, is that in order to take care of the business you're running, you got to take care of your own family. And that's pretty important in sort of everything we do, and widely understood from the demands on schedule, time, et cetera. There's a understanding that you have a job sort of at home as well, and you're going to be a better employee if you can be a better family member. And so to the private equity, a lot of times people will say, "Oh, you guys are private equity." We're actually not. We're a family business, and that's sort of a key differentiator. That sort of any of my classmates that I sort of know that are in the PE world, their managing directors aren't telling them to go home at 10 o'clock at night, right? So there's a big focus on making sure that we're taking care of the whole person, which is nice.
That's great.
One other thing I just wanted to, sorry, he made me think of something else. So you can cut me off, you're my sister. You can turn off the mic. One of the things we did to reinforce that, and this is a hot topic in Maine, so I thought it was worth commenting on. One of the things we did to make sure our benefits also reinforced that family feeling. One of the things we did this last year was we created a week of paid FMLA in advance, separately from what the state program is doing, so that we have a lot of folks that have elder care challenges, and we also, the new parents also. So we wanted to make sure that before any other benefits like kick in on that there's a week that we tied it to FMLA because it was an easier approval to be consistent on that and linked it with that. But that's one of the things we try to do, is that if our culture is about family, what are our benefits? How do they align with that? And that was one thing we did. And it's not really a big expense. We don't have a lot of people out on FMLA, but it was a really well received by the workforce.
That's great. So now you've heard stories from our panelists. Does we have time for Q&A? Anybody have any questions they'd like to ask anybody? Any from the Zoom world?
Not from the Zoom world, but we can check in with them.
This one back.
I
I have a question. For your FMLA week, is that paid?
Can you repeat the question too,
Yeah,
please?
so that was,
Sure.
go ahead.
Yeah, so the question was is that FMLA week paid? Right, that's what, so, yeah, so we're a size company where we have to follow FMLA anyways. So what we just decided to do was, if someone's on that, their first week, they don't have to use paid time off, so they have an extra bucket, to use for up to 5 days.
What your various external partners are looking for. So the story that Philip alluded to around when Hussey started the board of directors, my dad was going to try to get a loan, and the Halsey Smith was the loan the bank guy at the time, and Halsey looked at my father and said, two things: you need to get an outside board, and you need to get your father off as president. And so, yes, yeah, but that's what triggered, and that was back in the early 60s. So it was an environmental kind of component as opposed to the size of the business or the number of employees. So I think there can be a whole bunch of different factors.
Yeah,
Yes.
just a quick question. I think this probably applies to the board or the panel up there. Could you each give maybe a quick example of maybe a blind or weak spot, similar to Jeff's point earlier about maybe business financial compared to engineering in his example, where you've either had to grow professionally or further your education or utilize an outside advisor or resource in a creative way?
Okay, I'm not sure if this will answer the question, but like, so a challenge for me is like, as I said, I came from an educational background into this. So I, like Jeff was saying, I wasn't a business person. Probably I looked up P&L also. It's entirely possible. But you know, having the piece of where I came in and we were a 2-person team and I was touching every avenue of the business to now having a staff of 7 people and not having that exact connection to everything that comes in and out the door, and also having to take that knowledge that was in my head that I did it all and be able to get that on paper and have those processes documented so that anybody can come in and do those pieces and do it consistently, I would say like that's kind of a challenge that I've faced.
What comes, oh, this is a lot louder. So what I thought of was, so my mom and I, she's not planning on retiring anytime soon, nor unfortunately am I. But we're financial planners, so we plan everything way in advance. And we do a lot of estate planning, and Sarah is also a certified business exit consultant. So we help people with those things all the time, but we recognize that we needed an outside perspective to help us do our succession planning. So we hired a business coach last year to help us through that process and think through some different scenarios of what that transition would look like, what kind of a disaster situation would look like versus what like a slow fizzle into retirement for my mom would look like. And laid all of that out and had a lot of back and forth. And that was really, really helpful to have someone check our ideas.
So I'm a lifelong learner. I love learning and doing new things. And so 8 years ago was presented with an opportunity to acquire another business, similar but different. And that excited me to be able to go through that exercise. And thankfully, actually, a guy I went to church with does mergers and acquisitions, and he was able to consult for me and kind of shepherd me through that process, and learned a ton. And thought when the finish line was when we got to closing and purchased the business, and I realized that was actually the starting line. And trying to roll that business in, and the two cultures come together and all that. So I think if you have that mindset that everything is learning experience and there's going to be stuff you don't know, but just build your network, and you hope that you have others that you can lean on and get referrals, and people learn as you go.
In my own personal situation, I joined the business coming from a background of social service and education. So here's a family member coming in and starting out in HR, and I realized that for credibility purposes, it was important for me to get some credentials. So and I was supported by my brother Tim, and we have resources for leadership development and things like that. But I went and got some specific leadership things around human resources, and then I thought it was important that I get certified SPHR, widely recognized certification of HR stuff, expertise, and I felt that was important for my own credibility within the business. That we were just, hey, let's just put a family member in HR, they'll be fine. So that was one of the things I've done. And then I also was just very honest with myself that I was never going to be interested or cut out to be a CEO. That I really, and when I wear my shareholder hat, I know I wouldn't want me as a CEO, even if I'm the best damn HR person in the country. So that was always an important reality piece for me. And then trying to get the certification just for perception, but also there was good learning that's continued, that's required continuous learning to keep that certification.
So a recent practical example, I, for better or for worse, drew the straw leading the rewriting our shareholder agreement. And so it started, this is the end of a 15-year agreement, 20-year agreement. And so started 3 years ago. We'll be voting on it next, this coming July. And one thing starting that process, there's a lot to think about, especially when there's multi-generations involved, two classes of shares, a lot of existing rules. You gotta go get legal counsel, right? So we had multiple meetings without a lawyer involved. Obviously, the business has a lawyer, the family works with counsel. We didn't involve them in those early meetings, ended up doing a lot of rework, honestly. Because you didn't think about this, and this. So if I could go back, we'd probably save quite a bit of time involving counsel from the get-go. I have two sisters that are lawyers, but I am not one. I'd start there, yeah.
Great question, Chris. Anybody else? We've got a couple more minutes. Sure.
I want to hear about what those games were that you did, that just a funny little games. I'm just curious, like.
Yeah, so there were some of them. Repeat the question. Oh, so those, what type of games that we played at the event? And actually, we just went online and found, like 3 to 5 minute games that people could play. So there was one that was really kind of classic, where you put a pantyhose over your head and you drop a baseball at the bottom of it. So now you're like an elephant and it's pulling down, and you're gonna walk down the road and beat your opponent who's walking next to you, knocking down water bottles by swinging it without being able to use your hands. So besides the humor aspect, there was a lot of precision that was needed. We had some other ones that involved just dexterity things and how many apples you could kind of pile up, and there were certain rules around that. They weren't really overly physical, but most of them involved some teamwork and some humor, and then we ended up, then we had a quiz about Hussey history for the tiebreaker at the end, and there was all sorts of controversy, but everyone claims they still had a good time.
That's great. I think Catherine is passing something out.
It's the survey. Yep.
And Catherine, you would like that filled out here
Yes, please.
before we leave?
Yes, please. That's why.
And if you complete it, you'll be in the drawing for some door prizes, right?
You do have pets, yeah. Really.
Well, I want to just thank the panel. I think this was really interesting. Again, it's kind of storytelling. Our businesses are part of who we are, and I think, being able to share the stories with this group here today. Thank you very, very much. Let's give them a round of applause.
Okay. Well, thank you all very, very much. Big round of applause for our speakers and panelists. They just did. There we go. Another round of applause. And for our sponsors, Danielle and Crystal, we really appreciate it. And Maine Trust, and also Harvard Pilgrim Healthcare. Thank you. So did everybody get their name tag or their business card in here? Because if you don't have a business card, you can fold your name tag over and we can pull it in here for the door prizes.
So my name tag in there.
Pardon? You can throw it in. Yeah. Anybody else? Yeah, that's a little weighted.
Get the heavy one.
Get the heavy one. What else? Okay, and then on December 7th, we get to hear Jeff Messer talk about planned and unexpected family business transitions. So we'll be here. And then we have our holiday party on January 24th. And then we're also doing calls out for any programs now. For anybody, if you're interested or think about ones that you would like with speakers, we have an application on the website, and you can reach out to me or to Brooke, because we have to plan all next year. So we love that.
Something like this.
Thank you, Priscilla, for being our tech
I'm
queen.
trying,
And
but
Brooke is on.
I'm kind of failing in this moment.
All right, so who would like, here you go, Anne, you can pick a name.